It's time. It's time for me to open up about this part of my craft. I've touched much on advice, which beginners could use to start practicing, as well as some slightly heavier topics for more intermediate witches wanting to try something a little bit more technical in articles that I've written. I, however, had deleted most of my old articles a while back where I shared a lot of my own theology and my own methods out of fear of being seen. It's now time, once again, and for good, to tell you all a little bit about my craft. My experience with Andriel has been very much as my experience with all of my craft has been. It's never been about what YouTubers, authors, users on the Amino app have said. I've taken inspiration and basic teachings from the app, but I've never been the kind of person to believe something simply because it's what I've been told. I can never be religious because how can I truly tell myself I believe in a God that I have not felt? My craft as a witch has always operated primarily on trial and error. I know that cloves work well in banishment because Google told me that years ago, but I know that I like to bury sigils after I burn them because that's the method I found to be the most useful. I know that folding paper toward me brings energy closer, because that's what YouTube taught me, but I know that seashells work in death magic because I went to a beach and used bones and remnants of sea animals to invoke the dead. Learning from others has its place, but in the end, the best method is always found in what you believe to be the most true. But what does witchcraft have to do with this deity? Everything. I didn't believe in a god until, as I began understanding my clears in my late teen years, I began experiencing a presence. It wasn't simply at home, in fact it usually wasn't. I noticed on a day-to-day basis that I would notice it. However, also when employing the use of substances used for millennia in witchcraft and shamanic practices, which I won't describe for the sake of keeping this video PG, I felt it even deeper. But what was it that I noticed? What was it that I felt? Well, you see, we're effectively looking at now 8 years of psychic visions, soul flight, general use and mastery of all clears, reading into signs and patterns, and so on. If you were to piece together a story from history with simply archaeological finds, we couldn't find one Pannonian Avar belt piece and say that they lived closely with horses between the 5th and 8th centuries Common Era. It is a collection of different written accounts, for example by the Franks, as well as many excavated grave sites that tell us this. It is a story which is pieced together. Let's return to Andriel. Of all the many civilizations lost to time, could this be a forgotten deity reaching out to me? I asked myself this at age 18. You see, if I had been so quick to turn to the internet, I may have put what experiences I did have into the box which was given to me. I would have forced Andriel to fit into the shape of a comparable deity, for example, like Hecate. But this would have been an injustice which would deny acknowledgement of her many opposing attributes. So a deity reached out to me and I've spent 8 years learning to understand her from visions and signs? Effectively, yes. So, what's she like? O beautiful, O loving, O ageless being. O duality, O peace, O darkness. Let me show the world the perfection of your being. Andriel is a deity deeply connected with the natural world. As I was first beginning to understand her, I believed her to be the god of the forest, but this is a limiting depiction of what she is. Andriel personifies the forest, the earth and bodies of fresh water. She is the river, the lake, the woods, the grass. She is that which gives life. But you see, Andriel, for years to me, had such a foreboding presence. Why could something so beautiful be so unsettling? How could I be so afraid of the goddess of life? Well, you see, to classify her as such is restrictive of what Andriel actually symbolizes. I feel it's wrong to categorize her as the goddess of and leave it at that. But to communicate it such that you will understand, Andriel is the goddess of duality. She is just as much life as she is death. The joy, the fulfillment I feel her feel is equal to the wrath I sense in her. Merciless is Andriel, wicked is she. She is the river that brings life, as too she is the flood that swallows and drowns us. She is the tree that gives us fruit, as too she is the insanity of the wood. Andriel is kind, she is loving, she is loyal, but so too is she evil. Andriel I have known to guide my hand during my most baneful magic. I understand that the world of the spirits, where we must go when we die, is Andriel's domain, just as much as the forest is. I feel her equally in a garden, on a lake, in a cemetery. I feel her equally on a river, in a wood, in the liminal space as I send my spirit out of my body, to scream her rage at the enemies I face. Andriel is the mother. She is the goddess of witches and witchcraft. She has taught me that I deserve to be loved, and that I need to take care of myself. She has ripped away my band-aids and exposed me to the world, but been always the first to blanket me when the world gets too dark. She is duality. As well as this, she is also associated with cows and often comes in the form of one. Her appearance tends to be a woman with long black hair in her 50s or 60s, a cow, or occasionally a young woman, simply the younger version of her usual visage. For this, I care deeply for cattle and recognize them as beings which hold a gate between the two worlds. Cattle are implicit of the liminal. During my workings, I sometimes operate with a cow head pendant on a brass chain. I use this tool for safety when working against violent spirits or demons. Methodology, in the context of witchcraft, I feel should be subjective, but I also try to honor Andriel in mine as much as I can. Sure, my ancestors, past lives, Taniwha from New Zealand, my former home and birthplace, as well as friends of mine who have passed away are important to involve in my magic. But Andriel is the one being who is for the longest been present. Indeed, when I first learned of her being, I also experienced other spirits who I believed to be other deities. Now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure how much of it was what I believed it was. Andriel has been the single thing which has never changed. Well, where does she come from? I know her to have fallen from a tree as one of its branches. As it hit the ground, from its remnants, Andriel was born. This is why the symbol I use to invoke her depicts a tree with a branch missing. Think of a capital Y, except the right hand is a continuation of the stem. And how do you invoke her? Over time, I've known the words to be different. At first, what I understood was to begin a prayer by saying the words Andriel Sasakoya. In recent years, I began to pronounce it more as Sakoi, and in even more recent months as Sakai. As I mentioned, learning to understand Andriel is not a task of Googling, but working with her and taking all of her teachings to heart. When you are finished with your prayer, you simply repeat it. Andriel Sasakai. Being like a mother figure, would I compare her to the goddess in Wicca? No, and here's why. In Wicca, there is the god and the goddess, where there is an equal balance of feminine and masculine. The goddess depicts a feminine archetype and role. It is reliant on its masculine counterpart, as too it is on her. Moreover, Wicca tends to lean away from the left-hand path, which would cut Andriel's very being in half. It would be inaccurate to describe her simply as a healing, giving, nurturing, feminine goddess of the divine. Andriel is the dirt, the dead, the cold, the cruel, the decay. Andriel, although being predominantly feminine, is also a figure which displays masculine qualities. I like to put her more into the witch mother archetype, as in the broad theological overview of traditional witchcraft. I'll post a link to an article about traditional witchcraft in the description of this video if you kind of want to get an understanding on that. Well, yes, I know that not everyone is thinking it, but some may be wondering, is this Conpan? Well, is it? No. And to understand why this isn't Conpan, we need to understand what Conpan is. Conpan, or constructed pantheon, refers to deities which are invented for the purpose of being worshipped. In a conventional sense, the existence of these deities lies in fiction, but it is the belief of the worshipper in their existence which wills them to life. After all, everything beyond the physical realm is a construct. Why can't the gods from Lord of the Rings be real? I have no issue with Compantheon, however to compare Andriel to Compantheon would be like digging up a script from a civilization of which we don't know the language. Let's use the Pannonian Avars again as an example, and categorizing it with the same classification of a language as Elvish from Lord of the Rings. Of course, I can't dig up a script for Andriel, because as with any deity, her existence is suspended in our belief of it. If Andriel were an instance of Compan, I wouldn't have made it so hard to understand her, such that 8 years on I'm still learning. You see, the unsettling, wicked nature of her is something of which I used to be fearful. It's only in recent years I've understood Andriel enough to only feel love. I would feel therefore that Conpantheon is an unfair classification of Andriel as a deity. Literally, how could it be closed? I don't even know where her origins would have been prior to her being initially forgotten. She evidently reached out in order to be once again remembered. I can't tell you working with her will be a certain way, or that any of you should or shouldn't. I can promise you, her presence may feel looming or foreboding at first, but once you realize she means to protect you and chooses to reserve her capacity for absolute evil for the people who do wrong by her, Andriel becomes a very welcome spirit. Andriel has taught me how to use magical tools. She's taught me that to be powerful, I don't need them. She has taught me that dirt is a tool, that swamp water can be loving, that death is love, that I'll feel better if I get out of the house and go for a walk. Andriel has taught me that I am powerful not only in my craft but in my life. She has taught me that I am loved and that I deserve to be. Andriel has guided my hand to bring the feeling of torture to demons, to violent spirits. Andriel has guided my hand to give love and to nurture. She has taught me that all lives are equal and that I ought to do right by others, but in the same breath there is polarity. Andriel is a teacher, she is a mother. She is the goddess of the forest, lady of the river, herder of cattle, correspondence of Cancer and of Scorpio, mother of death. Andriela Sasakai, you have guided me into adulthood and taught me to take my place in the world. I am ever here and ever grateful for your love. My being is a reflection of your name. Andriela Sasakai. Thank you everybody, I hope that you liked this kind of video essay. I pretty much just reworded an article I wrote about her so that I could share it on YouTube. If this is something that you like and you'd be interested to hear me talk about, things more directly related to witchcraft, or how to do anything in that kind of realm, or to touch on any spiritual kind of topic in this format, let me know. Otherwise I'll do something completely different. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys whenever the next one will be.